You're listening to the Visually Stunning Movie Podcast, the place to come for movie reviews, along with some extra fun talk about movie-related topics like box office and awards. You can find us on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, and basically any place else you can find podcasts. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter for even more content. If you like what we do, feel free to share us with your friends, like and leave feedback wherever you listen to us, and let us know what you think. Now, let's get on with the show. Ryan, aren't we lucky we have gotten finally to see the mythical Snyder cut of Justice League?
Yes.
4 hours, 3 minutes, as opposed to 2 hours and 1 minute of the theatrical release.
Yeah.
We don't have long today. We definitely don't have 4 hours and 3 minutes, but let's just go back real quick because we've talked about this before in the lead up to this. Neither one of us was saying that this movie was going to suck.
No.
Nor was either one of us saying this movie was going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread.
No.
Okay. So just so everyone knows where we're starting, I believe my opinion was that it couldn't possibly live up to the hype. That was going to be the worst part, is if it did not give those fans exactly what they wanted.
Well, I don't know if those fans know exactly what they wanted, but that's an entirely different.
That is a ridiculously accurate statement. Fans often don't know what they want. Let's start with the easy stuff. Tell me it wasn't just me. This thing's in 4:3 aspect ratio.
It's close to 4:3. It looks like the IMAX ratio.
Oh, is that what it is?
So I'm guessing that I'd have to, but that's what it looks like to me, which is an odd choice considering I don't know that it will ever play on an IMAX.
Right.
But yes, it is framed differently than you might expect, particularly for something that it was made to be watched on a television. And that's an artistic decision.
It is. I'm not saying it's good or bad. It took me a minute to realize that it was not widescreen.
Yeah.
So
I believe it's actually taller, or and anyway, I think that's kind of what it was. I'd have to, but yes, the aspect ratio is different than what you might initially expect.
Right. Okay, so let's get to the meat of this.
Yeah.
Let's start with the general statement. Can we both agree that the movie doesn't suck? We didn't think it was going to suck, and it does not, in fact, suck.
No.
Okay.
I agree. Yes.
Is this the greatest thing since sliced bread?
The greatest thing since sliced bread. Well, very little is.
That is
the greatest
also true.
thing since sliced bread. I guess I have to go just because that's such a outlandish thing. With no, this is not the greatest thing since sliced bread. It doesn't. Yeah, no, not the greatest thing since sliced bread. But can I say it's a monumental improvement? I think I feel that way. You think
it's okay. You think it's you would say this is a monumental improvement over the theatrical release.
Yes, I would.
Here comes the fun part. I see now. I want to just blanket disagree with you, except that I need to understand in what way you are considering this a monumental improvement over the theatrical version.
Sure. The character development in this is far better. We are given more of a set of villains, a hierarchy that I think works considerably better. I think that if you watch the Whedon cut or the Whedon version, it's like everything on fast forward. And in some cases, some people would argue that's good because there's definitely Snyder gets to do all his slow motion and things. But I would also say that they cut so much of the dialogue that I can't. It's almost like trying to watch the non-extended version of The Lord of the Rings versus the extended, where you could tell that they were just trying to rush it to get it in within a couple hours. So yeah, I think, does it need to be 4 hours? I don't know that it needs to be 4 hours, but it definitely needs to be far more than 2. And so it's certainly not perfect, and there's certain things that Snyder put back in that maybe he could have trimmed a little bit here and there. But I think in general, it makes more sense as a movie. It makes more sense that the general threat of everything makes sense. In Snyder's cut, the bad guys are overpowered, and you really think that that these guys are going to lose unless they can bring back Superman. And that's, whereas in Joss's, it was never really that. It didn't seem anywhere near as necessary. This was, look, the 5 of us together are just not going to cut it.
Right. That actually was one of the really nice quotes that I had to. There are 6, not 5. There's no us without him.
Yeah.
When they're debating whether they should try to bring him back, and that whole debate is actually framed and considered differently in this version.
Yes.
Let me touch on what you said. It doesn't need to be 4 hours. It definitely needed to be longer than 2 hours. That goes back to the point that I was always making before, is that for anything you wanted to pick apart, it was Whedon's version, in that his name was on it, but it was Warner Brothers 2 hours cut.
No, let's be clear here that Whedon was given an impossible task. Probably.
Yeah, he really was.
I think that's the. So I don't think that this is all a bash on Whedon, although I think that Whedon was probably one of the furthest from they picked him for reasons they probably shouldn't have.
Right.
They picked him because he had success in the Marvel universe. They picked him because they thought that he had some street cred with the geek audience. They picked him for a variety of reasons. But what they didn't do is pick somebody who actually matched up with the movie that they had shot. And maybe they hated the movie they had shot. I don't know, but it would be funny that they would get cold feet on this one,
right? And not BVS.
I mean, it's like, well, you've already committed to this vision now,
right?
And I'm gonna look. This is absolutely the Superman in Snyder's version of this film is not the Superman that's in Joss's in any way, almost.
You know what?
There's one scene, but then he kind of turns into colored version again.
Well, see, now there were scenes. Everyone's like, "Oh my God!" Remember, everyone was like, "Joss he reshot like most of the movie and yada yada yada." And watching 4 hours of footage, there's not a lot of new footage in the theatrical version versus what you see now. It is ordered differently.
He changed a ton of dialogue.
He did.
A ton of dialogue that's been changed. And so there's a lot of cutaways that they've done. So often when you have one character talk to another and they go from one character to the other, just one single person in a frame, they have changed a huge amount of dialogue.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is hokier than, and I'm not going to say that there's not some hokey stuff in Zack Snyder's stuff. There is, but Whedon's writing style and dialogue, there's a few things that just really stick out. his pop culture
Yeah.
reference sort of thing, and there's a couple things that just really don't fit, I think, in with what the film really was. And having watched the two, I think now you start to see, essentially, Joss went in, and I don't know if they just didn't want to do the CGI for Darkseid or whatever, but he eliminated him entirely, which is, I think, a massive mistake, because he's such an important part of the story, and the reason why things are happening and why Steppenwolf is doing what he's doing. And it gives Steppenwolf a whole lot more reason to be doing what he is doing.
Right. And, in the Snyder version, yes.
It gets a little convoluted with the what antimatter or whatnot.
Anti-life equation.
There's anti-life equation, yeah. So there's a couple things that I think aren't quite as clear as I would have liked them to have been.
Yeah, there were a couple.
But I think, generally speaking, I completely understand. If I was Zack and I saw Joss Whedon's version of my movie, I would be devastated.
Yeah. Well, again, stylistically, you're totally. I don't think that narratively there's a lot of difference.
Well,
between the two films.
Point A to point B, maybe, but if you're talking about character motivation, if you're talking about the characters as
that is all stuff that got cut for time.
Yes, but
so are you making a movie to develop characters? And I want to touch on that because I actually do think it's important when you're looking at this one. Are you trying? Was Joss trying to develop characters, or was he trying to get a story from point A to point B in 2 hours so that Warner Brothers would be happy moving forward with the DCEU? And
I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters.
To whom?
The 4 hour as we're judging just the movie versus movie.
Right.
This is not about Joss being a good or bad director.
No, I'm not saying it is.
This is about me saying there's two films here.
Yes.
One of them works, one of them doesn't.
Okay, so yes, I will agree and disagree with this point. I think the Snyder version works better in terms of if Warner Brothers wants to keep him driving the narrative of their universe, because this film touches on and sets the stage for a crap ton of other things in the DC universe that if you look at it like that, then yes, this is a way more complete film, assuming Warner Brothers is going to build off of it. Now, we can probably rightly assume that at the time they told Joss to do a 2-hour cut, Snyder's future was uncertain and the direction of the universe was uncertain. So they needed a Justice League movie that would put people in the theaters. And so that's what he gave them. Now, have they reconsidered that? Obviously, because they allowed him to go back and refinish this and put their name on it and sell it. So apparently Warner Brothers has reconsidered that. But that does not negate their responsibility for what they've done earlier. Now, again, if they build off of a lot of the things in this film, I think DC would be in good shape.
I think that at the end of this film, you want to see the next movie, whereas the end of Joss's version, you feel like, okay, they're done.
But fine. Because there's an end. But that's what I'm saying. If Warner Brothers is actually on track to build off of this movie, then yes, this movie sets them up to go a lot of places they probably could and should go. I would also argue that this film demonstrates the fact that this film was rushed by Warner and that they needed to establish at least one of the other major characters first in a separate film. Because a third of this film is developing Cyborg and or Flash or Aquaman. So, because this was pre-Aquaman, really, sort of, because that's all changed. So in that instance, had they had another standalone film, this movie would have been 245, maybe pushing 3 hours, but they wouldn't have had to had so much exposition for so many characters in it. I'm not saying that what they have here is bad. I'm saying that it proves that they can build going forward because there's a solid basis there. But it also proves that they've tacitly acknowledged that they screwed up getting to this point.
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, I'm not. I've said that I thought Warner Brothers picked the wrong person to guide their universe. I feel that Warner Brothers has made a lot of mistakes. And that it has become, too many people have had their heads involved. It was the moment that Christopher Nolan said, "No, I don't want to do it." Essentially, is Warner Brothers went to a scramble. So yeah, if there's a villain in this, it's Warner Brothers. But for me, all I'm looking at is which tells a better story, which tells a more complete story,
this does.
Which tells a story that, and it is so infinitely more. There's so much more there. Everything makes so much more sense, except for a couple of Snyder's little crazy scenes and things. But that's, it's obvious that Snyder is better when you give him free reign for a director's cut. Every movie that he's done that's had a director's cut has been improved. Now, does that mean that he can't? I mean, he needs to figure out how to tell a story more quickly, or how to do some of these things more quickly.
Yes,
but I think that it's. I was about 2 hours in, and it was 12:30 at night, and I thought, okay, am I going to do the next two? And, with we're losing an hour already, and I thought, yeah, I do. I want to do it, and I powered. I didn't know. I powered my way through it. I actually, I wanted to see where he was going with a lot of these things, and I thought the payoffs were pretty solid. I thought a lot of the relationships were, the father-son and the cyborg relationship's a lot better. The even Amy Adams and her situation is radically different in the Snyder cut.
She hasn't a little bit.
She hasn't gone back to work, whereas in the Snyder cut, in the Whedon cut, she had gone back and was taking fluff pieces.
Right.
The trauma of losing Superman is radically different in the Snyder version.
Yeah, and the Flash's character is his character is different in a lot of ways, and most notably, it's most notable in the tunnel battle.
Yes,
the first in Whedon, it's the first battle for him, but but in that battle, you see a lot of differences between the theatrical version of Flash and Snyder. Now, that's not to say that there's not a lot of the theatrical Flash in this version. It's just not nearly as pronounced.
He's not as goofy. He's goofy, and he's strange, and he's awestruck.
Right.
I actually, there's stuff. I think that, and again, you're probably right. Should they have had a Flash movie? Yeah, probably, and then we wouldn't have had to have gone through a lot of this. But I was thankful that we did get what we did get in this film for Flash and for Cyborg. Because it makes them.
It had to be there for this film.
Well, and it makes everything have a purpose, and you suddenly have characters that are having personal trouble. The interesting thing about superheroes isn't necessarily they're super powered. What's interesting is they're super powered and not that different from us.
Right.
Just he can run really fast, but he's still got some mental issues he's got to deal with. He's still dealing with a lot of that stuff.
And that's
where I think this works.
Right. And that goes back to an old argument that we would have a long time ago here, was the difference between why people liked Marvel more than they liked DC. And it's because Marvel would give you a person who had superpowers, and DC was giving you super people and then try to make them human.
Yeah.
And in this, that balance in the Snyder cut, the balance is really a lot closer on a lot of these characters.
Yes.
Which again, but so yes, it does elevate the movie. I yes, I like it better than the theatrical version. There, just to be clear at this point, after everything I've said, yes, I do like this better than the theatrical version. I didn't dislike the theatrical version because I knew what it was. Now, what it was limited, but for what it was, I took it and I moved on. But if, like I said, if they're going to build Flashpoint off of this movie, which they've set up in this movie. This movie ties Justice League better into the Aquaman film than the theatrical version does.
A lot. Yeah.
A lot. The sad thing is that if you pull all the cyborg background out of this one, not all of it, but most of it, and make a film, you can take that footage and build a solid hour 45 of a cyborg film before you ever get to this one. And
Sure.
and it would have been okay, but it would have been and there wouldn't have been as much hinging on it because it's still cyborg. And I hate to say that because I'm sure there's some rabid cyborg fans out there. But it would have been a solid film, and it would have made good money, and it would have gotten good reviews because there's a nice father-son dynamic. And it would have been good, and then they wouldn't have had to cram all of that. They could have just had some father-son interaction in this for the important bits that are in this film for the flow of the narrative. So yeah, I hope that this film has opened Warner Brothers' eyes more than anything, because there's a lot to learn for them from this going forward.
Yeah, I think so. And I want to be clear about something here. I don't know that this is the movie that Snyder would have made a few years ago. I don't know if given free reign, this is the film that he would have come up with. I think a lot of it was there, but I do think that the things that he went through, he dedicates the film to his daughter. He includes Hallelujah in it again, but it's because it's his daughter's favorite song, the Leonard Cohen song, although it's sung by someone else. There's a lot of stuff in the film that is as much about him dealing with the loss of his daughter as it is dealing with the story. And I think that, I think it's hard to say that if Warner had just let him do his thing, what would that movie have looked like? I don't think it would have been this movie exactly. I think it would have been closer to this, but I think there's stuff in it I felt like that this was at least what he wanted.
Yeah.
And I think as the person that they gave, that they allowed to make those first films, or at least or guide those first films, you can't chicken out halfway through and think it's not going to have an impact,
Right.
And so I think now this is still the darker superhero film than maybe a lot of people want. It's not as it's heavier.
Yeah, it's way heavier.
It's much heavier than what we would see in a Marvel film. I don't know that this one needed to be rated R. I think he just threw in some words here and there. There's a little more violence, but it felt kind of like that wasn't necessary.
Right.
We didn't. It would have been fine without the few F-bombs that he threw in there, essentially. That were just there for whatever purpose, really. But I think about just most of the film just makes so much more sense. Now, is it a perfect film? No, it's 4 hours, and it almost does feel like and maybe this is a little liberating that because it wasn't being shown in a theater, because they knew that, in theory, if somebody only wants to watch part 1 through 3, they can watch part 1 through 3 and come back and watch part 4, 5, 6 or whatever later on.
Right.
It can be separated up in that way if that is what you would like to do. So
yeah, because let's be there's an intro, 6 parts, and an epilogue.
Yeah.
To this film, and they're labeled.
And the epilogue is a little messy. I mean, it goes all over the place.
It does. It really does.
It almost feels like we had a lot of these ideas. We don't know if any of them are going to get. We don't know what the future of the. I don't know that they know.
No.
What the future of the franchises are. So let's put in and give people a taste of what we were going for.
Well, next. And it's also because there's a phrase in there, and I don't want to use it. It's also a get out of jail free card if they don't do any of the stuff that's in the epilogue.
Yes. Yes.
So they do give themselves a get out of jail free card, but it's a nice way to throw some more ideas out there. Could I have done without that one cameo? Yes, I could have.
Well,
but there's another cameo, a 2 appearance cameo. The first appearance of which makes no sense to me, actually. When I watched it, I'm like, that makes no sense to me at all.
I went back and watched it twice, and that's a little messy. But,
because it makes no sense. I mean, had it been an actual conversation, would have made total sense. And then they threw that thing in right at the end of that scene, and I was like, now it doesn't make any sense. But it made perfect sense up to that point. And then the last cameo made perfect sense in the scope of the grander thing that they're trying to do.
Yes.
So, like, yeah, I think the fans that were clamoring for the Snyder Cut are going to like it a lot. I also, unfortunately, think they're going to take the opportunity to further malign Whedon's cut. But again, I don't hold Whedon responsible for that cut. I mean, he is, but I don't hold him responsible for it.
Well, okay.
I don't want, it goes back to me. I don't want people praising Warner Brothers for allowing this to happen while simultaneously forgetting that Warner Brothers put themselves in this situation. But yes, the Snyder Cut fans are going to be happy. That's where I'll stop. They're going to be happy.
Well, I just think it's a much better segment of a bigger story. And I think if you play everything, drop everything in, it's now a much better franchise than it was before they went back into this. And I think it's I'm not saying Warner Brothers didn't screw up. No, they absolutely. They did along the way in more ways than I ever thought possible. But that said, I'm just judging this based on, based on this. Compare this to this, and which works.
Oh yeah, if you just put the 2 versions up against each other, yes, this is the superior version,
and it's not even close as far as I'm concerned. Now, if you want to dig deeper and try to assign blame for that, that's an entirely different thing, and I don't think that's. I think that's. Yes, I think it falls mostly on Warner Brothers. Who are Warner Brothers? I don't know. I don't know who was making those decisions. But I think that if we're gonna go after, if there's a villain in this, it's not Jaws.
No,
I think he was probably given little to no time to put something together. Did the best he could. I don't think he had actors who were on board with his vision. I think that they were kind of like, this doesn't make sense, because they knew what they had already shot.
Right.
And they knew what the script was, and they knew lots of things that as an audience we didn't know, but as an audience we watched it and it felt like it just was slapped together, and it feels even more like going back and rewatching it. I was just amazed by how choppy it is, and I don't think I noticed how choppy it was the first time around. And I was amazed by a lot of the stuff that was great in Snyder stuff that isn't even mentioned at all
again, because
because
it's tangents that they couldn't develop. So I mean, then
yes.
People probably would have gotten in trouble for why did you mention this and then go nowhere with it. But
Yeah,
because that's why I didn't mention it, because I couldn't go anywhere with it. So yeah,
this so much more of the Amazonian world.
Right.
I mean, we get at least a half hour of stuff that's not in the theatrical version, and
right.
It's stuff that's actually really pretty important and interesting.
Well, you know what I thought was funny. Like I said, narratively, there's not a lot of difference between the two versions narratively, but the development, of course, is much more expanded. But I think it's almost 2 hours. The first 2 hours of this film is the opening sections of the theatrical version where all the mother boxes are identified. Well, where that's identified. We get Aquaman, we get the Atlanteans, we get the Amazonians, we get some of that stuff, but all of that stuff before all the people come to, all of our heroes come together, all of that is like 2 hours of this film, and it's like 15 minutes in the theatrical version.
Well,
because it had to be.
This way, they don't. Superman, who he shows up in definitely the last hour and a half, I guess, of the movie, of the 4 hour version movie. He shows up,
halfway.
and there's a lot that's different about that. That's just a lot.
Yeah. But you know what? Like I said earlier, there's a couple scenes. Well, there's a few scenes that if you watch the theatrical version, like I said, I was like, oh, I'll bet Joss filmed that or wrote that, and then you watch this and you're like, he did not.
No.
And I was surprised by two of them specifically, both of them involving Superman.
There is a shocking optimism that I think it exists in the third act of the Snyder version that I don't think any of us saw coming. I think that there is a hopefulness in Snyder's cut that we all assumed wouldn't be there. I think there's a lot of stuff. I think that I don't think any of us understood why we knew to a certain degree why Justice League didn't work. But when you don't know what the parts are that are missing, or you don't know what it was supposed to be in the first place, it's kind of hard to say, well, this is why it went wrong.
Yeah.
Well, I think now we can look at it and say, we know why this went wrong, and we know where this went wrong.
Yep.
And what went wrong was it needed to be allowed to be what it was, or you needed to make one or two movies before you made this. There's a series of things.
Yeah.
But now we can see why that film was so disappointing. Now, are there going to be people who hate this version? Yes. There are people who are never going to like the Zack Snyder version of the DC universe.
No.
And that's okay. That is not necessarily a bad thing. Snyder's version of the DC universe is a very different version of the DC universe than even Frank Miller or a lot of those things. There's just a different feel. And if anyone who reads comics or books or that are written, these things are written by different people.
Right.
You might like a particular run of a comic series. When so-and-so was writing and working with this artist, it was just great, and then one of them left and it wasn't the same anymore. Well, that's what this kind of is. Only movies are bigger and more permanent.
Yeah. It's harder to retcon.
I can understand if somebody looks at this and says it's still garbage.
Oh no, it's far from garbage. Far from garbage.
No,
Someone's going to say it is.
Yes, and I think it's because they don't like the way that he's built these characters. They don't like these versions of these characters, and it goes all the way back to Man of Steel. It goes back, Batman versus Superman, even, and if you haven't seen the director's cut of Batman versus Superman, please see the director's cut, because it doesn't make it makes a little more sense, and then when you throw it in with this film, it makes a little more sense as well. So
yeah, I'm still not a fan. I love Man of Steel. I actually like Man of Steel a lot. Batman vs Superman, I'm not there. Even with the extended version, the ultimate, no.
Well,
but this is better than that. To me, it's way better than that.
Well, and I mean, I think part of it is Superman's not in as much, and people just I
like
don't
Superman.
I do too, but I think that there's a lot of issues with. I've always said that I think Snyder's version of the universe is different in the sense that most times superheroes are the best of us, and they're doing their best at being the best of themselves. Where I think Snyder's world that he's created, those superheroes aren't always doing. I mean, they may be the best of us,
right?
They're also the worst of us. If society's, we've seen society turn ugly. Well, in Snyder's world, society turns ugly, and so does its heroes. I think that's really compelling.
Because they're people.
I just don't think, but you can't do that with Superman. There's just certain characters that have been established in a way that, you play with it too much. It may be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But it almost goes. It does fundamentally go against who Superman is, and has been for decades.
Right.
So I understand if people have issues with what Snyder did, and I think that's and I don't. I'm in a weird way. I admire the fact that he messed things up so much in that sense that he took these things and took them in such a different direction. I don't know that I necessarily prefer it. I just think it's interesting.
I'm wondering what people are going to think when they see the Batman as compared to Snyder's.
I don't know. I don't know. And
I'm just just judging by what we've seen, it's like, well, it's going to be different.
Who knows?
So,
let's see.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see.
And I think Ben Affleck had a lot more to do in this film that made sense. I
like Batfleck. I had no problem with Batfleck.
And I think that this is. I think he's just. There's so much more here to him,
right?
And to his limitations as a personality, to his. I mean, I always think it's interesting when you have someone who is revered who says, "You know what? But I suck at this, and I suck at this. I'm really good at this, but this other stuff, oh my gosh. Yep. And here I am, I'm trying to do this other stuff, and I've been doing it my way for this long." I mean, I love those sort of elements to this. The difference between, this Batman from maybe previous Batmans is that he wasn't, even when he was a socialite, he's still kind of a prick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't charismatic in the same way that some of the other Supermen have been. The other
Batman.
So Batman have been. So I mean, anyway, I thought there was a lot of I don't know what I'm going to give it star-wise. I don't know how, when I sit down and write about it, what exactly I can guarantee you that this is far more structurally sound. There's far more value in this 4 hours than there were in the 2 hours that we had before. And so, again, I don't know if it needed to be R-rated. There's, I think, 4 F words in it, maybe 5. I don't know. A little bit of gore, but I don't. I mean, maybe. There's actually,
it's R for cartoon violence.
Yes, but Wonder Woman's a little more vicious at times. I mean, there's some moments in this where you get that they're not so, where you are reminded that most of these, if not, well, all of them actually, all of these are damaged people. They're damaged by what they've been blessed with, whether that be superpowers or money or whatever it is, whatever is supposed to make their lives great. In their cases, made their lives very complicated, and in some cases, that they are who they are because of how badly life went. I mean, the whole cyborg thing in this is so much better. I can't. I mean, like, I didn't care about him in the theatrical version. In this one, I get it. I get all his angst. I get all his frustration. I get, I mean, there's so much there. They've changed. They oversimplified in the theatrical version. Like it's almost a completely not completely different story, but let's just say that in the theatrical version, I think they say it's the bomb explosion. No, it's there's so much more emotional weight behind his creation as Cyborg. It's so much more.
Right.
And I like that. I like that I now know that because it was a character I wasn't really all that interested in.
Right.
And now suddenly, and this movie makes me go, because there was thought that he might not come back because the actors had some issues with the studio, and and he may be correct in what he's saying. I don't know either way. I wasn't there. But before, I didn't really feel like it would matter that much if he didn't come back. If they do anything continuing on this line, he's got to be there. I mean, this team of
as a character,
these guys that they build. Yes,
whether Ray Fisher comes back or not.
It'd be hard for me to, it's got to be, but he's got to be there. Yeah. I mean, what they've established in this is a team of. So when they talk about, they have the scene where they say, we're going to put this big table in here with 6 chairs,
but room for more.
To go. Hey, room for more. In the theatrical version, it was like, whatever, way to go. Go have your Knights of the Round Table.
Right.
Whereas in this, to me, it was like, yeah, okay, there is actually a team here. There is.
Well, they've already established that there's one more. There was a cameo that everyone was hyped about possibly getting, but I don't know that there was ever actually anything concrete behind it except for people going, and they're gonna X, and X didn't happen. So, but it's a thing. So real quick before we wrap it up, because I know you need to go. I don't know what star you're going to put on it. Just so you know, I just got an email. Social reactions are off embargo. We still can't post the review until tomorrow. But this will also be probably one of the few movies where I will post this discussion, and I will probably write up something a lot more involved with my 8 pages of notes or whatever it came to at the end of it. But overall, I'm pleased with it. I said for a long time, I didn't think it was going to be perfect. I said I wanted it to be good, and it's good. Snyder haters are going to hate it because that's what they do. I think the Snyder Cut fans are going to be happy. And I don't know that anyone is going to say it's perfect because then I just think they're fanboying.
No.
But it's an improvement, and it's a pretty solid film. And I hope even if Snyder doesn't direct any more movies for Warner, I think the seeds that are here should be tended and grown.
Well, and there's more of a sense of the future. I mean, even the Green Lantern Corps, all the things that, that I think, right. and to be clear, this movie isn't just setting up other movies. It's just the stuff that happens that it's not like we've got to do this, so that
right.
It's not like the
right.
Amazing Spider-Man films where this has to happen so we can set up this other film. I mean, it just builds a universe that's much bigger. And you get more of the characters, and you get a sense of impending something.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So even if he doesn't direct it, he's put things in place for them to develop, and I think that those are, generally speaking, good things that they should seriously consider developing. So that's where I'm at. I don't know what I'd rate it. I think I rated the theatrical as a 6.5 or 7. Because again, but I was using my scale of what it was versus what it needed to be, and not, praying for some mythical cut. This is easily an 8, and I would have to sit down and really crunch numbers to go higher than that. But it's a solid 8. It's I'm not waffling on an 8. It's an 8, period, easily.
Well,
and it might be more than that.
I'm going to have to think about, but I think as far as a experiment goes, I think that this is as dramatic and as welcome of a revision as the director's versions of Brazil are.
Right.
Where you get the sense of what the real movie was supposed to be, rather than what the studio tried to, make it
on us. Yeah. My only hope after this is that we are not now subjected to the Ayers cut of Suicide Squad. We are not subjected to all of these fan rammed revisions by the studios. I don't want that to become the norm.
I can tell you right now, though, but you know what I would like to see? I'd like to see the second Thor director's version, where I know that, where the...
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to see that.
Anything has to be better than what we got.
Well, then when you have actors who are upset that their characters were taken from these developed things and turned into just standard villains, yes, I don't want them to go back but I think that, ironically, if Warner Brothers had let Zack do what Zack needed to do, and I don't know, again, he was going through a lot. I don't know that, his daughter committed suicide, and who knows, if he was even in any shape whatsoever to work on the film, and I don't know all those situations, and but I think that you've got to go with. You hired the guy, you got to let him do his thing, and he generally will know what he's good at. So if you're going to hire the guy, and keep in mind, Marvel and Joss fought over that second Avengers movie.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's not that great of a film. I don't know which version is better, his or theirs, but when you have something that feels like a tug of war, and we know these things more now, I just think Warner Brothers should be careful. After the clamoring for the Donner cut, you would think that they would have learned something, but obviously the people who were involved with the Donner cut of the original Superman were long gone by the time. None of those people were still at the studio, I would imagine. But
a little more trust.
I want to see the movie as it was intended to be seen, and if it fails, then okay. But if it fails because you got cold feet,
that's on you.
Man, that's that.
And that's what happened here. That's what happened here.
Yeah.
There just needs to be more trust. Yeah. The studios need to trust. Now, I understand that there's more money at play, but if you're going to sign the check, that you are gambling. So, don't approve it. Then, take the hit. Don't approve it, but don't freaking waffle and ruin it and guarantee that it's ruined. Trust your director, trust your fans.
Yeah. And otherwise, I'm glad that I condemn Warner's for taking the film away in the first place, but I commend them for going back and letting it be redone. And there's a lot of new effects in this. Steppenwolf looks completely different.
I'm not going to say better. I'm going to say different.
Well, yeah, I don't know. He's less human. This one you could see the human of it, and the one that's in the Snyder cut is not.
Like I said, but I don't know if the effect did better. There's a couple of effects that are terrible, but that I was just like, ugh. But no, overall it's a much better film. So let's hope they learn something. Let's hope everyone in Hollywood learns something. So that is it. I know we have more films to talk about, which we will do soon. But till next time, hang loose. This one is premiering on HBO Max Friday the 18th. Thursday the 18th. Yeah. Thursday the 18th, HBO Max. Zack Snyder's Justice League. Yeah, check it out if you want to see the complete and whole 4 hours of footage. So till next time, I'm Mark. That's Ryan. Bye, Ryan.
See you guys.
And we will talk to you all later.